Carrying on with this music theme, this is a little sort of side note to the previous video with a comparison between the piano keyboard and the way it's arranged and the human rib cage. But when we're talking about the rib cage, well, we're talking about 12. That applies to one side, so you actually have 24. We can see that, or the equivalent of that, in music with the 12 major and minor keys. I'm also almost of the idea that perhaps the first musical instrument was a rib cage that was struck with another bone and it gave off a particular tone. I don't know, that's just purely speculative. But then when you consider a lot of these, I suppose they're called hammers for something like a xylophone, they're not that dissimilar to one of the bones from the arm, because with a bone you'll have that long thin middle bit and then you'll have like a sort of fairly solid knuckle on each end, which is very similar to the hammers and things you would use in timpani in a symphony orchestra, or playing a xylophone, or there's various other instruments that also have they're actually struck in that way to create a sound, or even the hammers on a piano that strike the actual strings, or a harpsichord follows exactly the same principle. So there's another little tie up there with the 12, the 24. Something else that also occurred to me, going back to this illustration. So when we have C to C, that's 8 keys or 8 notes. So that becomes I'm trying to think of the word. It's gone at the moment. But from C to C is an 8. So that 8 forms 1. So that's maybe where 108 comes into this. And of course, if you double 108, you get 216. And then if you double that, you get to 432. Then we're sort of moving into the realms of that question of why did they change the frequency of music from 432 to 440? Because if you look at these shapes that are formed, how different they are between the 440 and the 432. Music is, if we look at music, the word music in etymology, I can get out of that I see some, and that in a way is what you could say it happens with music, because it starts bringing in such things as comparison to the makeup of human physiology and these numeric sequences of 24, 12, 8, 12, 5 and 7, where the 12 is split into 2 groups, and then the 5 split into a 3 and a 2, both on the piano keyboard and also within the rib cage as well. This is only skimming the surface, and I can only take this so far because I'm not a musicologist. I do have a certain understanding or a grasp of some of the basics of music theory, but I'm certainly no expert and don't claim to be. But maybe that's a good thing, because I'm not so immersed in an accepted academic way of looking at something, so I can sort of dabble, as it were, and look at something and then think, oh, that's got the same pattern as this. Because that's all we can do in this reality for frames of reference, is cross-compare one thing with another. I do have planned a series of videos that is actually going to look at the shape of the Earth in relation to human physiology as well, because that, I feel, is also revealing. But where can we go with this? We can go, well, the sky is the limit, you could say, because when we bring in a cross comparison between, say, 88 constellations, and generally there are 88 keys on a standard piano keyboard, it starts to look, well, this is no longer a coincidence with any of these things. And what is the origin of music? Where does it really come from? How did it start? I don't know the answers to this. Generally, it's accepted that music has been around for a long time prior to the Greek era, but it seems to have been formulated in the way we have it written today on the printed score sheet, which was developed by the Greeks. But I would imagine it would go back further than that, but maybe the way it was expressed was never written down. It was just an oral tradition. I really don't know the answer to that. But it does seem to be one of these things that sort of emerged fully formed. So there's a lot more questions than there are answers to this, but I feel I see some. Music goes a long way to in this exploration and how it interconnects in terms of numerology, etymology. You've got the whole aspect of timing with music. You have time signatures. Incidentally, on a printed score, the time signature common time, which is 4/4, is often expressed with a letter C on the stave. So, and it's generally on that middle of those 5 lines. So you have a sort of middle C being shown just in the one stave, but obviously it would appear on both the staves, which those 2 groups of 5 make the great stave as well. So just a little extra follow-up, things I'd forgotten to say about music, but you've got such things as sharps and flats, which is how we go from 8 tones. With the semitones, we end up with 12 tones. So you've got that number 12 comes in, and its relation to the 8, the relation to the 7 and the 5 all ties in with this. Consider also the organ is basically an inverse human being. Because with our physiology, we have one windpipe and many organs. But the musical instrument, the organ, is the opposite. It is one organ with many windpipes. But like everything else in music, it requires a living organ to bring the whole thing to life. An organ won't do anything unless there is a player to actually play it, and quite a complicated coordination with the foot pedals and both hands. This was commented on with a piano, but with an organ, it's all 4 limbs being used. And of course, to power the organ, before the machine age, you would have someone with some bellows. So they're basically like the lungs that are, it's the taking in of the air and the expelling of the air as a sonic sound with an organ, and a terrific sound it has. I would highly recommend going into a cathedral or a church, a large church, where they have one of these magnificent organs, when you can actually feel that vibration from those the sort of bassier end of things. It's a fantastic feeling that I don't feel any other instrument quite captures in that sort of majestic way. I'm not saying go to a religious service, but certainly there are many churches and cathedrals that do put on concerts specifically for organ music, because it's not a transportable instrument. It's sort of almost as if there's the organ, now build a structure around it, be it a cathedral or a church. But that's a whole topic in itself, about the healing aspect and all the speculation with what have become places of worship. What was that, what they were really built for as well? That's another whole topic in itself. It's probably one I'm not going to cover, because it's sort of been blurred into this whole Tatarian Empire nonsense, and that has been shown to be something there just purely to mislead. It's totally untrue. So it's not a topic I'll talk about on this channel, but we will stick with the cross comparison of things, and I'll bring to the table the little bits I've gathered together and say, well, here's what I found. When we compare this with that, look at what's coming out of it. There seems to be a commonality of design, of blueprint to all of these things, which is revealed in the numbers as much as anything else. There's a lot more to unpack from this, and I'm not proclaiming here that I'm going to be able to give you the full picture, because I don't have the full picture. I see some, which is music, and from my own experiences, it's better if I can just give you what I've got, and then it may inspire you, or it may jolt a memory and think, yes, and it reminds you of something through thought association, so you too can bring something to the table. And I'm sure we can effectively reverse engineer all of this to get back to source, because that's another definite pattern. Going back to source is the best place to go. Obviously, anything to do with history and the history of music, it gets to that point where it becomes very obscure and in a sort of dark age where it's a bit of a mystery. But that's not to say that we can't uncover a lot of things out of this, as much as we can appreciate and enjoy the music as well. I would thoroughly recommend taking up that challenge that I gave a few videos ago of try taking 2 weeks out, breaking pattern, doing something different in listening to nothing but classical music, and then maybe combine it with the other little experiment of go out into a public place with headphones on, listening to a piece of classical music, and just sit and observe what in the hearing sense, and observe in the visual external sense. And I'm sure you'll find that quite an amazing, wonderful experience. It also sort of, I'm trying to think of the right words here, it sort of emphasizes or puts the spotlight on your inner world, but not of the world. Try it for yourself, and I think you'll get exactly what I mean from that. Anyway, as always, unconditional love to you all. Don't forget, if you require a one-to-one tarot card reading, I'm still available for those. It could be the thing that changes your life, puts you on a new trajectory. It may spark something that helps you find a way forward, and finding a way forward that breaks pattern, which will lead on to like an opening of a new door, a new chapter in your life. Something really exciting could come out of that, because everything is there in potential for you to tap into. but it does require you to take an active step in that direction. How do you find that direction? That may well come through in a tarot card reading. So as always, unconditional love to you all. Until the next video.